I can't believe in the time of COVID that I can still get interrupted by airplanes. Where are you going and how did you get there? Oh, it's a helicopter. Whoops. I swear I can hear a plane. Maybe it's been so long since I've heard a plane that I don't know what planes sound like anymore. 2020. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for another video. Today's topic is inspired by a few different avenues. One, it's something that you guys have asked me about quite a bit here in the What Me Did Next community. Two, it comes up with clients a lot, like more than it doesn't. And it's also something that's happened to me that I haven't spoken about here on the channel in all the time that I've been making these videos and putting them up on the internet. And that is when we seek help from our loved ones or our support network and they have a bad response about our eating disorder. We might be telling them about it for the first time. It might be that we keep returning to them for support and help and they're just not giving it to us. They're having bad reactions, they're saying unhelpful things, and how to kind of manage that help-seeking process. I truly believe, particularly now that I've been coaching clients for almost 3 years, that help seeking is one of the most essential skills in recovery, if not just life generally, living, being a human. I don't think that that's something which is really embraced as a skill. We don't talk about help seeking like it's a skill. If anything, help seeking can be sort of stigmatized as being weakness or being too vulnerable and, you know, needy, etc. It isn't, it doesn't have to be. Help seeking and help seeking effectively is a skill. These are kind of the analogies that I use when I talk about why help seeking is so important. So if we, for instance, get caught in a rip at the beach and we get into trouble, are we better off putting our hand up to the lifeguards when we're first in trouble and kind of a few meters out into the water from the shore? Or are we better off kind of fighting against it and depleting all our energy and being pulled out further and further and further and further towards the horizon and then sticking our hand up and saying, hi, I need help, when it's so much harder for people to reach us, to see us, and we're much less capable of actually being able to utilize that help and help ourselves. So that's why I'm a big advocate for reach out early and try to do it at a time when you can use that help the most effectively. My other analogy highlights why it's important not only to reach out early, but to work out ways to communicate the help that we need really effectively, really specifically. And that's because, let's say for instance that in my apartment building I could hear somebody screaming out for help, calling out for help. Of course I would run to them and help them, but what would be really helpful in terms of being able to provide them with the specific help they need is for them to yell out either like fire or intruder or I've fallen or I've injured myself. It means I can get on the phone to 000, I can get the people there who need to be there. In order for you to be resourced and assisted in the way that you need to be to get to the outcome that you want to get to, which is obviously for things to improve and for you to be in a safer, better headspace or safer, better situation, we've got to help our helpers help us. Part of my job as a coach is to help people to approach help seeking and to work on their communication, their boundaries, and how to manage and tolerate when people have potentially bad responses. And most crucially, what we're going to talk about in this video, I was about to say episode, this isn't a TV show, how to identify who is capable of supporting us in the way that we need it. So my experience with help seeking, especially initially in recovery, was really varied. Some of it was excellent and some of it was terrible. And I'm sure the people who made the comments and said the things that were not helpful probably don't remember it, but I sure do. Some of the great responses were from my family. My mum was absolutely not hesitant in being like, what do you need? What can I do? Let's get you help. And I was extraordinarily privileged and lucky to be able to access that help and have that response, but also privileged to have the means financially, geographically, etc., to access actual treatment and good treatment. My sister and brother-in-law were also phenomenal. They had an open door policy at their house whenever I needed them to go over there, to call them, to rely on them. They were so supportive. They celebrated my milestones, as did my mum and the friends who were kind of there for the journey. And then some of my friendships were actually repaired by me reaching out and talking about the fact that I was in recovery and talking about where I'd been for the last few years mentally, how that had affected our relationships. And funnily enough, through my recovery process, I returned to a lot of my very old, deep and very important, significant friendships like Josie, like Mark. We became much, much closer through the process because it was just unconditional support and encouragement and love, and just a kind of like a welcome home. Like, oh, okay, this all makes sense now. Like, let's help you get where you need to get to, which was beautiful. My dad also was phenomenal. I didn't tell him about my eating disorder until I was in recovery. He lived overseas. He didn't really see the day-to-day, and it was something I kept hidden from pretty much everyone until I went to recovery. Now, having said that, when I was on this tour de force of telling people about my eating disorder and trying to get as much support as I could, because I knew that was going to be crucial, there were some not great responses. I had a response from some friends of mine who had been in my life since I was about 14. I was in recovery at the age of 25, so we'd known each other for 11 years. We went to school together, boarding school together. And when I told them that I had just newly gone into recovery from the eating disorder, their response was, "You don't look like you have an eating disorder. You've never looked like you have an eating disorder. So what's this recovery deal all about?" It was very suspicious kind of tone and glancing at each other and looking at me. And that's somebody who was in a straight size body. So little clue about why it might not be any fun at all for people in marginalized bodies or from marginalized identities who, you know, aren't seen in the stereotype at all. There were quite a few people who had that reaction, this air of suspicion, this kind of, what are you talking about? And I can sympathize with that and understand that now that I'm recovered, because people don't know how to respond. That reaction can be a reflection of their own awkwardness. It can also be sometimes that you're pressing on a subject which is uncomfortable for them, because maybe privately, secretly, without your knowledge, that's something that they've also dealt with, whether or not it's an eating disorder or disordered eating, or it just might be something where when you talk about it, they kind of go, oh, this is getting a bit close to home. I don't want to talk about your stuff because then we might have to talk about my stuff. That wasn't the only experience I had. I had a number of experiences like that where it was like, what are you talking about? No, you don't. You don't look like you have an eating disorder. You've never talked about this before. What? There were also reactions from people who clearly feared being blamed, who maybe had a defensive or hostile reaction, like, don't point the finger at me, I didn't contribute to this. These are all really, really common negative reactions to trying to open up to somebody about your eating disorder. Now, just because they're common doesn't mean that it's the majority. That's not been my experience personally, or as an onlooker, as a coach. The majority of people are compassionate and encouraging, and even if they don't know exactly what to say or what to do, they are loving and supportive and kind. Your loved ones are not professionals. They are not therapists. They're not dietitians. They're not coaches. They are going to get it wrong. They're going to say the wrong stuff, but we've got to look for the intention behind it. Insofar as someone having a response like the one I detailed, where you're met with suspicion or negativity, or, you know, someone who's pushing you away because they feel that you're blaming them, my advice to people is always to use this as an opportunity to observe what kind of help helps you, what kind of support helps you, who are the people in your life who make you feel validated, supported, encouraged, loved, even if they don't do it perfectly. Is their intention good? Are they there to listen? Even if they don't have the perfect thing to say, do they sort of sit with you and hold your pain with you and, you know, give you a shoulder to cry on? Are there people who do react with hostility or defensiveness? Do they shut down? Are they made uncomfortable by your pain or what you're expressing to them? Do they turn it back and make it about themselves? Do they minimize or kind of treat you with, what are you talking about? Or make you feel silly, or make you feel, invalidated for sharing something personal with them, even if you're not asking for anything other than to be able to share these things with them. We're all going to have those experiences, just so you know. Nobody's really exempt from that. No one's exempt from meeting humans who are fallible. We've all been fallible, probably with our loved ones as well. The trick here is to look at this less through the lens of, what does that say about whether or not they love me? What does that say about how they value me? What does that say about how they estimate my worth or the seriousness of my issues? That's not really what it's about. What it's really about is what people have to give versus what we need from them. Let's say, for instance, that you came to me and said, Mia, If you give me $1 million, I can get rid of climate change overnight. Obviously something I'm passionate about, that'd be great, if only. But you said, in order for me to do it, I really, really need $1 million. It's gonna do so much good and it's gonna change the world. I would have to say no to your request. No, I cannot give you $1 million. And if you asked me why not, the answer would be not that you don't deserve it, not that you're not entitled to it, but that I do not have it to give. I do not have that many digits in my bank account. So when you are asking somebody for their love, their support, their encouragement, their validation, and they do not give it to you, it is not necessarily because they've done some kind of worth analysis or value analysis and said, oh, well, yes, I have this capacity for empathy and kindness and encouragement and support and unconditional love, but I'm choosing not to give it to you. It is very likely that it is something they do not have in the bank, in the reserves to give to you, whether it's because of their own experiences, their own mindset, their own mental health status, their own history. It might be it's something they never experienced themselves and didn't learn how to develop, maybe because they chose not to or they didn't get the opportunity to. It's usually the latter. This is why help seeking is a skill, and what I believe is such an essential skill, because it's less about getting immersed in what does this person think of me or what does their behavior say about me, and it's more about stepping back and observing, is this interaction effective? Like, is it getting me to the outcomes that I want to get to? If these are my goals and this is how I want to feel and this is where I want to be, does this work? Do I have evidence to say it either works or it doesn't? It doesn't. Therefore, I need to observe and analyze what does work and seek that out instead. You might find these people in your family, in your friendship groups, at school, at uni, at your workplaces, online. There are so many places where you can find people who you connect with, who really get you. One of my best friends, Millie Thomas, who is another eating disorder recovery coach up in Queensland, she has been one of my closest friends for more than 2 years now, and we have never met. She understands me in ways that nobody does. She's one of the few coaches who I know. She's one of the few public advocates in Australia who I know. She loves and supports and encourages me in a very specific way that, you know, we get each other, and we've never met in person. So there are so many avenues. Get curious. Start to explore some of those avenues, to have more of those people in your life if that's something that you are seeking out. The people in our life can bring so much joy and so much encouragement, but check their emotional bank balance first is my big help-seeking tip for today. I hope you guys found that video helpful. Let me know in the comments below. Let me know about some of the experiences you've had with help-seeking, positive or negative, any tips that you might have for each other. Don't forget to come and follow the podcast as well. I've been uploading the episodes here on YouTube. You can find them on the channel. Mark, one of my best mates, is now co-hosting with me every week. New episodes go up Monday morning Sydney time. We're talking about all kinds of stuff, pop culture, politics. So make sure that you're tuning in for those episodes every week. I will be back next week with a brand new video. In the meantime, as always, much love. Take care. Bye, guys.